Okay, let's talk about Tyrion V. Tyrion V is mostly a build-up chapter. It's relatively short. It's about 5,000 words. I suppose that's long for Game of Thrones, but short for the rest of the series. It is probably known best for Tyrion and the Sky Cells. There's more. It built. There's more conversation after this, but this is really where you get to see Tyrion as the classic Tyrion character, where he's always coming up with a quip and he's always being, rude and insubordinate and things like this. Uh, Tyrion's personality was just so slightly different in the previous chapters, where he definitely had the bitterness in those early chapters, but he wasn't this constantly making jokes kind of character that he eventually develops into. Um, and it's also, this is kind of an interesting chapter in that we have to remember that in the original drafts of a Game of Thrones, in that original third that he wrote, that George wrote early, like we could say the November '93 drafts, like everything that he was writing beforehand, it seemed as if Cersei was actually the murderer of Jon Arryn, and at some point George R. Martin changes his mind and switches that to Littlefinger and Lysa. And it's very clear that by this point in the story, George is well into Littlefinger and Lysa being the culprits. And there's a lot more strategy with what Lysa is doing here. It wouldn't make sense if Cersei were the culprit, just as a lot of the early dialogue with Cersei still doesn't make sense because it still kind of has some relics of when she was the one guilty of the murder. But yeah, let's get into it. It's funny because on a first read, this probably has different feel than on multiple on reread, because now there's no surprises. We know where this is going, but this is sort of it's a little bit of a slow burn here. Tyrion. "You want to eat?" Mord asked, glowering. He had a plate of oiled beans in one thick, stub-fingered hand. Tyrion Lannister was starved, but he refused to let this brute see him cringe. "A leg of lamb would be pleasant," he said, from the heap of soiled straw in the corner of his cell. "Perhaps a dish of peas and onions, and fresh baked bread with butter, and a flagon of mulled wine to wash it down, or beer if that's easier. I try not to be overly particular." And so you can see this is kind of a new Tyrion, where he's making a joke, and here he could very well just be killed by this guy, but he's still making these jokes. He can't stop. "It's beans, Mord. It's beans," Mord said. "Here," and he held out the plate. Tyrion sighed. The turnkey was 20 stone of gross stupidity, with brown rotting teeth and small dark eyes. The left side of his face was slick with scar, where an axe had cut off his ear and part of his cheek. But he was as predictable as he was ugly. He was as predictable as he was ugly. But Tyrion was hungry. He reached up for the plate. Mord jerked it away, grinning. "Is here," he said, holding it out beyond Tyrion's reach. The dwarf climbed stiffly to his feet, every joint aching. Must we play the same fool's game every meal?" He made another grab for the beans. Mord shambled backwards, grinning through his rotten teeth. "Is here, dwarf man." He held out the plate an arm's length, over the edge where the cell ended and the sky began. "You not want eat? Here, come take." Tyrion's arms were too short to reach the plate, and he was not about to step that close to the edge. All it would take would be a quick shove of Mord's heavy white belly, and he would end up a sickening red splotch on the stones of sky, like so many other prisoners of the Eyrie over the centuries. "Come to think of it, I'm not hungry after all," he declared, retreating to the corner of his cell. Now, you may be reading this and thinking, "Oh, this is a dumb little exchange of Mord taunting Tyrion, and it's just going on and on about this, like, beans." But George R. Martin is really clever here. He could have just had Tyrion wake up and describe the sky cells. And there would have been a description. But he doesn't do that. Instead, he makes it dialogue. He introduces the aspect of the sky cell by having Mord taunting Tyrion and bringing the beans over to the edge. And you slowly, over the course of the conversation, realize where Tyrion is. It's really quite creative. It's a very masterful way of introducing this environment without being boring. He's making it more interesting. Like, oh, where is he? What's going on here? It's not a regular cell. Mord grunted and opened his thick fingers. The wind took the plate, flipping it over as it fell. A handful of beans sprayed back at them as the food tumbled out of sight. The turnkey laughed, his gut shaking like a bowl of pudding. Could have just had Tyrion wake up and view the outside and be like, oh, there was the wind rustling and all of that. In fact, I think that's what the show did. They just had him wake up. But here, the slowly discovering where they are over this teasing of beans. Tyrion felt a pang of rage. You fucking son of a pox-ridden ass, he spat. I hope you die of the bloody flux. So, pox, sexually transmitted diseases are a thing. For that, Mord gave him a kick, driving a steel-toed boot hard into Tyrion's ribs on the way out. I take it back, he gasped as he doubled over on the straw. I'll kill myself. I'll kill you myself. Oh, that's very different. I'll kill you myself, I swear it. The heavy iron-bound door slammed shut. Tyrion heard the rattle of keys. For a small man, he had been cursed with a dangerously big mouth, he reflected, as he crawled back into the corner of what the Arryns laughably called their dungeon. He huddled beneath the thin blanket that was his only bedding, staring out at a blaze of empty blue sky and distant mountains that seemed to go on forever. Wishing he still had the shadowskin cloak he'd won from Marillion at dice after the singer had stolen it off the body of that brigand chief. The skin had smelled of blood and mold, but it was warm and thick. Mord had taken it the moment he'd laid eyes on it. The wind tugged at his blanket with gusts of sharp as talons. His cell was miserably small, even for a dwarf. Not 5 feet away, where the wall ought to have been, where a wall would be in a proper dungeon, the floor ended and the sky began. He had plenty of fresh air and sunshine, and the moon and stars by night, but Tyrion would have traded an instant for the dankest, gloomiest pit in the bowels of Casterly Rock. You fly, Mord had promised him when he'd shoved him into the cell. 20 days, 30, 50 maybe, then you fly. The Arryns kept the only dungeon in the realm where the prisoners were welcome to escape at will. That first day, after girding up his courage for hours, Tyrion had lain flat on his stomach and squirmed to the edge to poke out his head and look down. Sky was 600 feet below, and nothing between but empty air. If he craned his neck out as far as it could go, he could see the other cells to his right and left and above him. He was a bee in a stone honeycomb, and someone had torn off his wings. So there's some discussion of where the inspiration for the sky cells came from. Obviously, we don't really have anything like this in history. Dungeons were in walls often, but they're usually at the base where guards could easily pass by the prisoners, or in some sort of dark kind of dungeon out of sight. It was easier when you'd already built some walls to just dig a little hole and it'd be a cell. The idea that you're carving honeycombs on the outside of a wall is quite different. Now, that said, around the world, there's many different sites you can go to that kind of look like honeycombs, where people did carve their homes on the outsides of rocks. I mean, you can go to Cappadocia in Turkey and see these sorts of honeycomb looking houses. You'll go to a lot of different places where you'll see sheer cliffs with rooms kind of on the side of it, and that's mainly because when people would dig a cave for themselves to live, but there's usually, when they lived in it, a door, railings, things of wood. And then over time, those woods and railings and everything kind of fell away, and you're left with just the honeycomb structures. But they weren't really prisons. So it may be that George had seen a lot of different things around the world where you've got this kind of honeycomb formation looking, at a monastery or Cappadocia or whatever, and thought of that. The other thing people bring up is that there's a book series called The Accursed Kings. It's a French book series that George R.R. Martin wrote a foreword for. And in the foreword, he claims that The Accursed Kings was a big inspiration for him and A Game of Thrones. That may be true. He may be using a bit of hyperbole, being nice because he's writing a foreword and he was asked to write a foreword. So it's hard to say how inspirational The Accursed Kings were. I will say that in The Accursed Kings, there is a portion where they're imprisoned in a room where there's a well in the middle, and they're scared of rolling over and falling down the well. So it's a little similar, but it's hard to say if that was actually inspiration or not. It was cold in the cell. The wind screamed day and night, and worst of all, the floor sloped. The floor sloped ever so slightly, yet it was enough. He was afraid to close his eyes, afraid he might roll over in his sleep and wake in sudden terror as he went sliding off the edge. Small wonder the sky cells drove men mad. And the possibility of Tyrion going insane is an interesting thing when you think about Lysa's actions here. If Lysa is guilty of killing Jon Arryn and she wants to pin it on Tyrion going mad would make it so he wouldn't be able to sort of defend himself against that accusation. So there is some interesting strategy to these sky cells. But it's also a statement about what prisons used to be. Well, maybe they still are, but the purpose of prisons, generally when you take somebody for a crime and put them in a prison, you have three things that you're sort of thinking about when you're doing that. One, if they're in the prison, they're not out there doing crimes. Okay, so that's one. You're removing a threat from society and locking it up. But two, there's today we think about reform. There's a punishment. Like if you can go to you've done something wrong, here is the punishment. And then afterwards, not to do it again, or, that kind of aspect. And then there's the justice aspect that if you commit pain on the world, you should have pain committed to you. There should be a torture aspect to what you're doing in a justice sense. And that would prevent others from doing the same action. But yeah, it used to be that prisons were quite, they're still quite torturous today, but, usually being in the dark for weeks at a time is pretty rough. And that would drive someone crazy. And here in this situation, just the all by yourself to nothing, but just looking at the sky here. God save me, some previous tenant had written on the wall, and something that looked suspiciously like blood. The blue is calling. At first, Tyrion wondered who he'd been, and what had become of him. Later, he decided that he would rather not know. If only he had shut his mouth. The wretched boy had started it, looking down on him from a throne of carved weirwood. Beneath the moon and falcon banners of House Arryn, Tyrion Lannister had been looked down on all his life, but seldom by rheumy-eyed 6-year-olds who needed to stuff fat cushions under their cheeks to lift them to the height of men. Is he the bad man? The boy had asked, clutching his doll. And this is kind of weird. Again, like, where did Tyrion live? Did he live in King's Landing at court, or did he live in Casterly Rock? He should know Robert Arryn. Robert Arryn should know him. I understand that he's 6, but Tyrion is hard to miss. He's a little person, and Robert Arryn should know who Tyrion is. They are at court together. Earlier, Tyrion said that he knew Lysa. He knew Lysa to know that she's different. But here, yeah, he should know. He should know Robert Arryn. They would be attending dinners constantly. Like the Hand of the King and the Queen's brother. They'd be at dinners together. It's weird that they don't know each other here. He is, the Lady Lysa had said from the lesser throne beside him. He was all in blue, powdered and perfumed for the suit. Oh, she was all in blue, powdered and perfumed for the suitors who filled her court. He's so small, the Lord of the Eyrie said, giggling. He should know who Tyrion is. This is Tyrion the Imp of House Lannister, who murdered your father. She raised her voice so it carried the length of the high hall of the Eyrie, ringing off the milk-white walls and the slender pillars, so every man could hear it. He slew the Hand of the King. Oh, did I kill him too? Tyrion said, like a fool. That would have been a good time to have kept his mouth closed or his head bowed. He could see that now, Seven Hells. He had seen it then. The high hall of the Arryns was long and austere, with a forbidding coldness to its walls of blue-veined white marble. But the faces around him had been colder by far. The power of Casterly, you can see this is just very poetic now. It's Catelyn Tyrion language. The power of Casterly Rock was far away, and there were no friends of the Lannisters in the Vale of Arryn. Submission and silence would have been his best defenses. But Tyrion's mood had been too foul for sense. To his shame, he had faltered during the last leg of their long climb up to the Eyrie, his stunted legs unable to take him any higher. Bronn had carried him the rest of the way, and the humiliation poured oil on the flames of his anger. It would seem I've been a busy little fellow, he said with bitter sarcasm. I wonder when I found the time to do all this slaying and murdering. I mean, this is the thing, is he has to be in King's Landing to murder Jon Arryn. If he's in King's Landing to murder Jon Arryn, he should know Robert Arryn. He should know Lysa. If Jon Arryn dies and he's not even around, I guess, he hired somebody. He ought to have remembered who he was dealing with. Lysa Arryn and her half-sane weakling son had not been known at court for their love of wit. So he does know her. Had not been known at court for their love of wit, especially when it was directed at them. So he does know them, but he doesn't. But Robert Arryn doesn't know him? Imp, Lysa said coldly. You will guard your mocking tongue of yours and speak to my son politely, or I promise you, you will cause to regret it. Remember where you are. This is the Eyrie, and these are knights of the Vale you see around you, true men who loved Jon Arryn well. Every one of them would die for me. Lady Arryn, should any harm come to me, my brother Jaime will be pleased to see that they do. Even as he spat the words, Tyrion knew they were folly. He keeps reminding himself to shut up, and he never shuts up. Can you fly, my lord of Lannister? Lady Lysa asked. Does a dwarf have wings? If not, you'd be wiser to swallow the next threat that comes to mind. I made no threats, Tyrion said. That was a promise. People often don't think about these sorts of things, but threats and promises, there's if you ever take game theory, you'll learn about a warning, a threat, and a promise. Is it a warning, a threat, and a promise? A warning is something that you want to do, but you're telling other people that you're going to do it. just as a warning, like, hey, neighbor, I'm going to have a party. You're warning your neighbor so that he can do other things, but it's something you want to do. A threat is something that you don't want to do. And you're telling someone that you're going to do something that's going to harm them and harm you. For instance, murder, like killing somebody you'd go to jail. It's also very difficult to kill somebody. It's an inconvenience. And therefore, a threat by definition is not believable. So a promise, he's saying that he's taking it a bit further and saying that that this is not something that it's more of a warning. It's saying that I will do it. It has nothing to see a threat. You're saying that I don't really want to do this, and you don't want me to do this, so you should take other action. A promise is kind of saying like, no, it's going to happen. Like there's no threat. I'm not trying to change your mind or your behavior. I'm just saying that I'm going to do it. And that if I don't, I'm embarrassed that I'm calling myself a liar. Little Lord Robert hopped to his feet at that, so upset he dropped his doll. You can't hurt us, he screamed. No one can hurt us here. Tell him, Mother. Tell him he can't hurt us here. The little boy began to twitch. The Eyrie is impregnable, Lysa Arryn declared calmly. She drew her son close, holding him safe in the circle of her plump white arms. The imp is trying to frighten us, sweet baby. The Lannisters are all liars. No one will hurt my sweet boy. The hell of it was, she was no doubt right. Having seen what it took to get here, Tyrion could well imagine how it would be for a knight trying to fight his way up in armor, while stones and arrows poured down from above and enemies contested with him for every step. Nightmare did not begin to describe it. Small wonder the Eyrie had never been taken. Still, Tyrion had been unable to silence himself. Not impregnable, he said, merely inconvenient. Young Robert pointed down, his hand trembling. You are a liar! Mother, I want to see him fly! His guardsmen in blue sky cloaks seized Tyrion by the arms, lifting him off his floor. The gods only know what might have happened then, were it not for Catelyn Stark. Sisters, she called out from where she stood below the throne. I beg you to remember, this man is my prisoner. I will not have him harmed. Now, this is quite interesting. And we'll get into this when we talk about trials by combat, which is coming. But there is an issue of who is accusing Tyrion here. Which I think George actually kind of screws up. But we'll see. Maybe I'm mistaken. But if I'm remembering correctly, Lysa is the one that chooses the champion and things like that. So not Catelyn, which is we'll just keep going. But she does say this is my prisoner. It's her dispute. Lysa Arryn glanced at her sister coolly for a moment, then rose and swept down on Tyrion, her long skirt trailing after her. For an instant, he feared she would strike him, but instead she commanded them to release him. Her men shoved him to the floor. His legs went out for a moment under him, and Tyrion fell. Now, I just realized that at this point that we've gone to flashback. We started in the cell, and we've gone to flashback of how he got into the cell. And George, he occasionally goes to using the had, and then kind of transitions into present, into regular past rather than past perfect, right? Yeah. Using the hads. But he jumps to the had again, reminding us that like this is past perfect. Right? Am I using my tenses correctly? Yeah, past perfect. The gods only know what might have happened then, were it not. Oh, we got that. He must have made quite a sight as he struggled to his knees. only to feel his right leg spasm, sending him sprawling once more. Laughter boomed up and down the high hall for the Arryns. My sister's little guest is too weary to stand, Lysa announced. Sir Vardis, take him down to the dungeon. A rest in one of our sky cells will do him much good. The guardsman jerked him upright. Tyrion Lannister dangled between them, kicking feebly, his red face with shame. I will remember this, he told them all as he carried him off. And so he did, for all the good it did him. At first he had consoled himself that his imprisonment could not last long. Lysa Arryn wanted to humble him. That was all. She would send for him again, and soon. If not her, then Catelyn Stark would want to question him. This time he would guard his tongue more closely. They dare not kill him out of hand, or he was still Lannister Rock. And if they shed his blood, it would mean war, or so he had told himself. So it's interesting that, Tyrion puts in a lot of time, like really remembering his anger here and how he's going to have his revenge on the Eyrie and it being impregnable. And there's some that sort of say, does that mean Tyrion's going to fly dragon back here and just scorch everybody? But the thing is like Lysa's already dead and they left the Eyrie. So, if he has some sort of revenge, it's not going to be how sort of he imagined it. Perhaps his captors only meant to let him rot here, but he feared he did not have the strength to rot for long. He was growing weaker every day, and it was only a matter of time until Mord's kicks and blows did him serious harm, provided the jailer did not starve him to death first. A few more nights of cold and hunger, and the blue would start calling to him too. He wondered what happened beyond the walls, such as they were, of the cell. Lord Tywin would surely have sent out riders. When word reached him, Jaime might even be leading a host through the Mountains of the Moon even now, unless he was riding the north against Winterfell instead. Did anyone outside the Vale even suspect where Catelyn had taken him? He wondered what Cersei would do when she heard. The king could order him freed, but would Robert listen to his queen or his hand? Tyrion had no illusions about the king's love for his sister. If Cersei kept her wits about her, she would insist the king sit in judgment of Tyrion himself. So this is Tyrion thinks that Cersei has his back, Even if Ned could scarcely object, even Ned Stark could scarcely object to that, not without impugning the honor of the king. And Tyrion would be only too glad to take his chance in a trial. Whatever murders they might lay at his door, the Starks had no proof of anything so far as he could see. Let them take their case before the Iron Throne and the lords of the land. It would be the end of them. If only Cersei were clever enough to see that. So here we start learning the kind of legal system here. And by the way, all of this is Tyrion is thinking about various possibilities and thought about possibilities and announced plans never come to be. So he's saying, oh, maybe Jaime's going to attack the Vale. No, he's not. Maybe he's going to take Winterfell. No, he's not. Maybe Cersei is going to insist that the king sit in judgment. No, she's not. Like, none of these options are going to happen because he's thought about them. And anything people think about just doesn't happen. That's just the way things go with George's writing. And subversion of expectations kind of stuff. Keeping the surprises. But you can see that the legal system, usually under feudalism, when you have some disputes between vassals, the lord can sit in judgment, and if it's between higher lords, the king can sit in judgment. But then there's the issue of trials by combat, trials by battle. Yes, those did happen. It's a Germanic tradition that was not, that the Romans wrote about being quite savage, and somehow it spread through Europe, and the trials by battle happened. But they were more, you kind of think, oh, they're quite savage. they're more like duels. You know, you're talking about two different families where you've got no proof, you've got no witnesses in a dispute, you know, say a land dispute or something. And it's like, you know, the Lord doesn't really know and he can't really decide. So I guess we're going to have a trial by battle, you know, and the two people can fight it out. The trial by battle, it favors the wealthy because they're the one trained in combat. So it's not really a fair system. What's kind of funny is that we kind of see trials by combat as like inherently like just unjust and stupid and wrought with problems. What's very funny is in Ice and Fire, and that, you know, somehow the gods would give like the right side strength. What's funny in Ice and Fire is that the trials by combat all kind of ended up defending the innocent by chance. Tyrion wins his trial by combat, you know, here in the Vale, and the next one is what the Hound fights his trial by combat, and he wins because he's accused of all of these crimes of the Mountain. And then Tyrion, the Oberyn Mountain one. Yes, Tyrion loses that one, but at the same time, he's sprung free from his prison. And the other ones we've got Dunk. Dunk wins his, and Glendon Ball in the Mystery Knight, he wins his. So all of them, by chance, despite it being a rigged, horrible system, the innocent somehow keep winning. Tyrion Lannister sighed. His sister was not without a certain low cunning, but her pride blinded her. She would see the insult in this, not the opportunity. And Jaime was even worse, rash and headstrong and quick to anger. His brother never untied a knot when he could slash it in two with a sword, the Gordian knot. He wondered which of them had sent the footpad to silence the Stark boy, and whether they truly conspired at the death of Lord Arryn. Now that is interesting, that here he fully thinks that Jaime did silence the Stark boy. He definitely thinks that they're the ones guilty. I mean, I suppose this, you know, he does suspect that in that early Tyrion chapter where he has breakfast with them. So he himself thinks that they are guilty, even though they're not. They're actually innocent of it. And whether they'd truly conspired at the death of Lord Arryn, you know, maybe. It's funny that he's suspicious of them. If the old hand had been murdered, it was deftly and subtly done. Men of his age died of sudden illness all the time. In contrast, sending some oaf with a stolen knife after Brandon Stark struck him as unbelievably clumsy. And wasn't that peculiar, come to think of it? So Tyrion is now riddling this out, and he thinks we're led to believe that that the clumsiness is intentional, that he's trying to be framed. And yes, it does absolutely seem like he's trying to be framed. Tyrion shivered, and especially considering, you know, what Littlefinger's actions here. Tyrion shivered. Now there was a nasty suspicion. Perhaps the direwolf and the lion were not the only beasts in the woods. And if that were true, someone was using him as a cat's paw. Tyrion Lannister hated being used. He'd have to get out of here, and soon. His chances of overpowering Mord were small to none, and no one was about to smuggle him a 600-foot-long rope. So he would have to talk himself free. His mouth had gotten him into his cell. It could damn well get him out. Tyrion pushed himself to his feet, doing his best to ignore the slope of the floor beneath him. With an ever so subtle tug at the edge, he hammered the door with his fist. "Mord," he shouted. "Turnkey, Mord, I want you." He had to keep it up for a good 10 minutes before he heard footsteps. Tyrion stepped back for an instant before the door opened with a crash. "Make noise," Mord growled with blood in his eyes. Dangling from one meaty hand with a leather strap wide and thick, doubled over in his fist. Oh, it was leather, yeah. Leather strap. "Never show them you're afraid," Tyrion reminded himself. "How would you like to be rich?" he asked. Mord hit him. He swung the strap backhand lazily, but the leather caught Tyrion high on the arm. The force of it staggered him, and the pain made him grit his teeth. "No mouth, dwarf." Let's see. The force was staggering for him. The pain made him grit his teeth. "No mouth, dwarf man," Mord warned. "Gold," Tyrion said, miming a smile. "Casterly Rock is full of gold. Ah." This time the blow was a forehand, and Mord put more of his arm into the swing, making the leather crack and jump. It caught Tyrion in the ribs and dropped him to his knees, whimpering. He forced himself to look up at the jailer. "As rich as the Lannisters," he wheezed. "That's what they say, Mord." Mord grunted. The strap whistled through the air and smashed Tyrion full in the face. The pain was so bad he did not remember falling. But when he opened his eyes, he was on the floor of his cell. His ear was ringing. His mouth was full of blood. He groped for purchase. Groping for purchase. Purchase is grip. So he groped for grip. He groped for purchase to push himself up, and his fingers brushed against nothing. Tyrion snatched his hand back as fast as it had been scalded and tried his best to stop breathing. He had fallen right on the edge, inches from the blue. "More to say?" Mord held the strap between his fist and gave it a sharp pull. The snap made Tyrion jump. The turnkey laughed. "He won't push me over," Tyrion told himself desperately as he crawled away from the edge. "Catelyn Stark wants me alive. He doesn't dare kill me." He wiped the blood off his lips with the back of his hand, grinned, and said, "That was a stiff one, Mord." The jailer squinted at him, trying to decide if he was being mocked. "I could make good use of a strong man like you." The strap flew at him, but this time Tyrion was able to cringe away from it. He took a glancing blow to the shoulder, nothing more. "Gold," he repeated, scrambling back like a crab. "More gold than you'll see here in a lifetime. Enough to buy land, women, horses. You could be a lord. Lord Mord." Tyrion hawked up a glob of blood and phlegm and spat it out into the sky. I wonder if Mord's name was specifically chose to be Mord so that this joke could land. Lord Mord. Like, of all the names, he's like, well, Lord Mord. "Is no gold," Mord said. "He's listening," Tyrion thought. "They relieved me of my purse when they captured me, but the gold is still mine. Catelyn Stark might take a man prisoner, but she'd never stoop to rob him. That wouldn't be honorable. Help me, and the gold is yours." Mord's strap licked out, but it was half-hearted, desultory swing. Desultory is like lacking, like a plan or purpose. Tyrion caught the leather in his hand and held it prisoned. "There would be no risk to you. All you need to do is deliver a message." The jailer yanked his strap free of Tyrion's grasp. "Message," he said, as if he'd never heard the word before. His frown made deep creases in his brow. "You heard me, my lord. Only carry my word to your lady. Tell her..." What would possibly make Lysa Arryn relent? The inspiration came to Tyrion Lannister suddenly. "Tell her I wish to confess to my crimes." Mord raised his arm, and Tyrion braced himself for another blow, but the turnkey hesitated. Suspicion and greed warred in his eyes. He wanted that gold, yet he feared a trick. He had the look of a man who had often been tricked. Is lie, he muttered darkly. Dwarf man, cheat me. I, I will put my promise in writing, Tyrion vowed. Trying to remember the first time. Yeah, so the Lannister pays his debts. Line comes later. You kind of think that that it's going to be like said in this chapter, but it's the next Tyrion chapter. Some illiterates held writing in disdain. Others seemed to have a superstitious reverence for the written word, as if it were some sort of magic. Fortunately, Mord was one of the latter. The turnkey lowered the strap. Writing down gold, much gold. Oh, much gold, Tyrion assured him. The purse is just a taste, my friend. My brother wears armor of solid gold plate. In truth, Jaime's armor was gilded steel. But this oaf would never know the difference. Mord fingered his strap thoughtfully, but in the end he relented and went to fetch paper and ink. When the letter was written, the jailer frowned at it suspiciously. Now deliver my message. So, in many ways, this kind of comes back later on, more specifically in A Dance with Dragons, when Tyrion is promising paper and all these written promises of gold. So this is kind of his first written promise of gold. And this comes back in A Dance with Dragons. I mean, obviously he's constantly hiring people and bribing them, but there is something specific about the writing of a piece of paper and what it means. And this also comes in with the Brotherhood Without Banners and stuff like that. You know, they were giving out IOUs. You know, I think George is making some sort of statement about paper money replacing like gold money, but I don't know if it's anything a very cohesive kind of statement or argument. He was shivering in his sleep when they came for him late that night. Mord opened the door, but kept his silence. Ser Vardis Egan woke Tyrion with the point of his boot. On your feet, imp. My lady wants to see you. Tyrion rubbed the sleep from his eyes and put on a grimace he scarcely felt. No doubt she does. But what makes you think I wish to see her? Ser Vardis frowned. Tyrion remembered him well from the years he had spent at King's Landing as captain of the Hand's household guard. A square, plain-faced, silver-haired, and heavy built. A square, plain-faced, silver hair, a heavy build, and no humor whatsoever. Interesting comma usage here. A square, plain face, comma, silver hair. But he has a comma here between square and plain. No humor whatsoever. Your wishes are not my concern. On your feet, or I'll have you carried. So Tyrion does remember people in King's Landing. He remembers the captain of the guard, but not Sweet Robin. Tyrion clambered awkwardly to his feet. A cold night, he said casually, and the high hall is so draughty. I don't wish to catch a chill. Mord, would you be so good and fetch my cloak? The jailer squinted at him, face dull with suspicion. My cloak, Tyrion repeated. The shadow skin you took from me for safekeeping, you recall. Get him the damnable cloak, said Ser Vardis said. Mord did not dare grumble. He gave Tyrion a glare that promised future retribution. Yet he went for the cloak. When he draped it around the prisoner's neck, Tyrion smiled. My thanks. I shall think of you whenever I wear it. He flung the trailing end of the long fur over his right shoulder. It felt warm for the first time in days. Lead on, Ser Vardis. The high hall of the Arryns was aglow with the light of 50 torches burning in the sconces along the walls. Lady Lysa wore black silk, with the moon and falcon sewn on her breast in pearls. She said since she did not look the sort to join the night's watch, Tyrion could only imagine that she had decided mourning clothes were appropriate garb for a confession. Her long auburn hair, woven into an elaborate braid, fell across her left shoulder. The taller throne beside her was empty. No doubt The little lord of the Eyrie was off shaking in his sleep. Tyrion was thankful for that much, at least. You can see just how, with Tyrion, he's just trying to pack every line with something clever here. Oh, she's wearing black, so she's not in the Night's Watch, you know? And then, oh, he's little lord is shaking in his sleep. He bowed deeply and took a moment to glance around the hall. Lady Arryn had summoned her knights and retainers to hear the confession, as he had hoped. He saw Sir Brynden Tully's craggy face and Lord Nestor Royce's bluff one. Beside Nestor stood a younger man with fierce black side whiskers, who could only be his heir, Sir Albert. Most of the principal houses of the Vale were represented. Tyrion noted Sir Lyn Corbray, slender as a sword, Lord Hunter with his gouty legs, the widowed Lady Waynwood surrounded by her sons. All of the characters that are still here in the Vale, even by a Feast for Crows, and the sample chapter for the Winds of Winter. Others sported sigils he did not know: a broken lance, green viper, burning tower, winged chalice. I have to the broken lance sigil. That is. Are we told all of the House Wind? No, House Windman has the 5 different. Oh yeah, it has 5 broken lances. House Windman. This is the one with the really weird, busy sigil. The Burning Tower is House Grafton. Surprised he doesn't know Grafton. Grafton's a fairly large house. And then Winged Chalice is not House Hersey. Yeah, House Hersey. Among the lords of the Vale were several of his companions from the high road. Sir Roderick Cassel, pale from half-healed wounds, stood with Sir Willis Woad beside him. Marillion the singer had found a new wood harp. Tyrion smiled. Whatever happened here tonight, he did not wish it to happen in secret, and there was no one like a singer for spreading a story near and far. In the rear of the hall, Bronn lounged beneath a pillar. The free rider's black eyes were fixed on Tyrion, and his hand lay lightly on the pommel of his sword. Tyrion gave him a long look, wondering. Here's his whole plan coming up. Catelyn Stark spoke first. You wish to confess your crimes, we are told. I do, my lady, Tyrion answered. Lysa Arryn smiled at her sister. The sky cells always break them. The gods can see them there, and there is no darkness to hide in. He doesn't look broken to me, Lady Catelyn said. Lady Lysa paid her no mind. Say what you will, she commanded Tyrion. And now to roll the dice, he thought, with another quick glance at Bronn. Where to begin? I'm a vile little man, I confess it. My crimes and sins are beyond counting, my lords and ladies. I've lain with whores, not once, but hundreds of times. I've wished my own father dead, and my sister, our gracious queen, as well. Behind him, someone chuckled. I've not always treated servants with kindness. I've gambled. I've even cheated, I blush to admit. I've said many cruel and malicious things about noble lords and ladies in court. That drew outright laughter. Silence! Lady Lysa Arryn's pale, round face had turned a burning pink. What do you imagine you are doing, dwarf? Tyrion cocked his head to one side. Why, I'm confessing my crimes, my lady. Catelyn Stark took a step forward. You're accused of sending a hired knife to slay my son Bran in his bed and conspiring to murder Lord Jon Arryn, the hand of the king. So here we have 2 accusations, both from Catelyn and from Lysa. So Tyrion gave a helpless shrug. Those crimes I cannot confess, I fear. I know nothing of any murders. I mean, he does know. He has some suspicions. He could be helpful. Lady Lysa rose from her weirwood throne. There's the interesting thing is that the weirwood throne in the Eyrie it's obviously it's all rocky and and trees can't grow, so there'd be no weirwood on top of the Eyrie, but they felt the need to chop down a weirwood tree and make a weirwood throne, bring it up to the top of the Eyrie. And later, this weirwood throne kind of becomes a thing for Bran. Much later, with the in the Hollow Hill. So it is funny that there's these two weirwood thrones. I've got my theories that this weirwood is the thing causing that the souls and spirits in the weirwood are causing Robert Arryn trouble. But man, it's interesting that this sort of world building is seated all the way back here in A Game of Thrones. I'll not be made mock of. You've had your little jape, imp. I trust you enjoyed it. Ser Vardis, take him back to the dungeon, but this time find a smaller cell where the floor more sharply sloped. Is this how justice is done in the Vale? Tyrion roared so loudly that Ser Vardis froze for an instant. Does honor stop at the bloody gate? You accuse me of crimes I deny, so you throw me into an open cell to freeze and starve. He lifted his head to give them all a good look at the bruises Mord had left on his face. Where is the king's justice? Is the Eyrie not part of the Seven Kingdoms? I stand accused, you say. Very well, I demand a trial. Let me speak. Let my truth or falsehood be judged openly in the sight of gods and men. Now, again, normally you should go before the king, but a low murmuring filled the high hall. He had her, Tyrion knew. He was highborn, the son of the most powerful lord in the realm, and the brother of the queen. He could not be denied a trial. Guardsmen in sky blue cloaks had started towards Tyrion, but Ser Vardis bid them to halt and look to Lady Lysa. Her smile mouth twitched in a petulant smile. If you're tried and found to be guilty of the crimes for which you stand accused, then by the king's own laws you must pay with your own life's blood. We keep no headsman in the Eyrie, my lord of Lannister. Open the moon door. So, and the moon door is in the books on the wall. It's a door on the wall, not in the floor or anything like that. The press of spectators parted. A narrow weirwood door stood between two slender marble pillars, a crescent moon carved in the white wood. Those standing closest edged backward as a pair of guardsmen marched through. One man removed the heavy bronze bars. The second pulled the door inward. Their blue cloaks rose, snapping from their shoulders, caught in the sudden gust of wind that came howling through the open door. Beyond was the emptiness of the night sky, speckled with cold, uncaring stars. Behold the king's justice, Lysa Arryn said. Torch flames fluttered like pennons on the wall. Pennons? It's a long, narrow flag. Like more of the triangular flag. And here and there, the odd torch guttered out. Lysa, I think this unwise, Catelyn Stark said as the black wind swirled around the hall. Her sister ignored her. You want to try, my lord of Lannister? Well, very well, a trial you shall have. My son will listen to whatever you care to say, and you shall hear his judgment. Then you may leave by one door or another. So this is, yes, now he is asked for a trial, so the trial would come from the Lord. The Lord is the little boy. Really, he should ask for the king, but, it seems important enough that it would go to the king, considering that he's talking about the murder of the boy's father. He can't exactly be unbiased. She looked so pleased with herself, Tyrion thought, and small wonder, how could a trial threaten her when her weakling son was the Lord Judge? Tyrion glanced at her moon door. Mother, I want to see him fly, the boy had said. How many men had the snot-nosed little wretch? How many men had the snot-nosed little wretch sent through the door already? We don't know about any, really. I mean, he hasn't been in the Vale that long. Robert Arryn. I thank you, my good lady, but I see no need to trouble Lord Robert, Tyrion said politely. The gods know the truth of my innocence. I will have their verdict, not the judgment of men. I demand trial by combat. Now, this is not really how the medieval system worked. The trial by combat was usually two peers where you just didn't have, the Lord didn't have the information to make a judgment. And so you have a duel. It's the trial by combat seems really, really barbaric. And, but it evolved into the duel, the modern duel, which we also see as barbaric. But keep in mind that, like, for instance, fencing as a sport is like important because of these like duels, right? So this idea that a trial by combat would be some sort of superseding godly thing over a lord or a king's judgment, I don't know if there's much historical precedent for that, but of course Westeros can be different. Now, it is true that during trials by combat, women, clergy, the old, and like invalids and things like that can have proxies. Tyrion, being a dwarf, would probably get him out. But if he were a regular man, he would not be able to, get out of it. Of course, if he's a regular man, he'd probably been trained pretty well in his fighting abilities. A storm of sudden laughter filled the high hall of the Arryns. Lord Nestor Royce snorted. Sir Willis chuckled. Sir Lynn Corbray guffawed. And others threw back their heads and howled until tears ran down their faces. Marillion clumsily plucked a gay note on his new wood harp with the fingers of his broken hand. Even the wind seemed to whistle with derision as it came skirling through the moon door. Lysa Arryn's watery eyes looked uncertain. He had caught her off balance. You have that right, to be sure. The young knight with the green viper embroidered on his surcoat stepped forward and went to one knee. What was the green viper again? Was that House Linderly? Yes. House Linderly is also a pretty big one. Tyrion should probably know. My lady, I beg the boon of championing your cause. Now keep in mind that like all these men are looking to marry Lysa and become the lord protector of the Vale. They all kind of assume that I mean, in a best case scenario, they've got a good almost nearly a decade before Robert Arryn comes of age, and even in an other situation, it's quite likely he would die, and therefore whatever child they would have with Lysa in the meantime would become the heir. So this is why everyone wants to marry Lysa. The honor should be mine, old Lord Hunter said. For the love I bore your lord husband, let me avenge his death. My father served Lord John faithfully as High Steward of the Vale, Sir Albert Royce boomed. Let me serve his son in this. The gods favor the man with the just cause, said Sir Lynn Corbray. Yet often that turns out to be the man with the surest sword. We all know who that is, he smiled modestly. It's true, Lynn Corbray is probably by far the best fighter in here and could slice. Had she chosen Sir Lynn Corbray, yeah, probably Bronn would be cut to pieces. A dozen other men all spoke at once, clamoring to be heard. Tyrion found it disheartening to realize so many strangers were eager to kill him. Perhaps this had not been such a clever plan after all. Lady Lysa raised a hand for silence. I thank you, my lords, as I know my son would thank you if he were among us. No men in the Seven Kingdoms are as bold and true as the Knights of the Vale. Would that I could grant you all this honor, yet I can only choose one. And that's the thing, is if this is a dispute, the thing is this this started as Catelyn's prisoner and Catelyn's dispute. So really, it should have been Catelyn's choice in the trial, but somehow, the John Arryn murder gets tacked on, and so now Lysa is choosing the dispute. Because again, this is a duel. It's essentially a duel between Lysa and Tyrion. Lysa is a woman, so she cannot. But they're kind of framing it different, almost like the champion for the Vale is something, but it should be, if it's trial by combat, it should be like a duel. There should be an accuser and a plaintiff and a defendant. Lysa being the plaintiff here. I guess they do say, "My lady, I'm championing your cause." So it is for Lysa. She's a woman. She can't fight. She gestured. "Sir Vardis Egan, you are ever my lord husband's good right hand. You shall be our champion." Now, here's the thing here. Is Lysa kind of knows that this is the question of whether or not, does Lysa know this is a mistake? And she wants Tyrion to actually win, so she chooses the worst fighter of the bunch. Or the least significant fighter of the bunch. She didn't want one of these lords dying, these important lords dying. She didn't want Sir Lyn Corbray to slice up everybody, so she chooses old Sir Vardis. "You are ever my lord husband's good right hand. You are my champion." Sir Vardis had been singularly silent. "My lady," he said gravely, sinking to one knee, "pray give this burden to another. I have no taste for it. The man is no warrior. Look at him, a dwarf, half my size and lame in the legs. It would be shameful to slaughter such a man and call it justice." "Oh, excellent," Tyrion thought. "I agree." And this is the question of, is Lysa aware of all of this and is doing calculus herself? Lysa glared at him. "You demanded a trial by combat, and now I demand a champion, such as you have chosen for yourself. My brother Jaime will gladly take part, I know." And it's interesting that he doesn't bring up the fact that, can in the world of Ice and Fire, can everyone choose a champion? Because a regular able-bodied man should be fighting for himself, but of course Tyrion is not a regular able-bodied man, and he doesn't bring it up here. Vardis Egan brings it up, but "Your precious Kingslayer is 100 leagues from here," snapped Lysa Arryn. "Send to bird for him. I will gladly await his arrival. You will face Sir Vardis on the morrow." "Singer," Tyrion said, turning to Merlion, "when you make a ballad for this, be certain to tell them how Lady Arryn denied the dwarf the right to a champion, and sent him forth lame and bruised and hobbling to face her finest knights." Okay, so here it is that he is purposely, now he's bringing up the fact that he's both injured and a dwarf. "I deny nothing," Lysa Arryn said, her voice peeved and shrill with irritation. "Name your champion, imp, if you think you can find a man to die for you." "If it is all the same to you, I'd sooner find one to kill for me." Tyrion looked over the long hall. No one moved. For a moment he wondered if it had all been a colossal blunder. Of course, he was looking to Bronn earlier, so he's calculated all of this out. Then there was a stirring in the rear of the chamber. "I'll stand for the dwarf," Bronn called out. And boom, there's Tyrion V. Yeah, so this is quite a Tyrion chapter, right? Everything has to be clever. Everything written has to be clever. Long poetic descriptions of environment. Him being witty. Calculus. Dark thoughts. It's for a chapter where nothing yet happens, it's actually pretty exciting because it's really, really snappy dialogue. So, yeah, he did the flashback and then back again in order to make it all interesting. how he brings in, he makes even describing the environment a dialogue. Yeah, really well written, well written chapter. I mean, considering that, like, when you think about it, like, not much happens, right? Not much happens, but man, it's a lot of great dialogue because it's clever Tyrion. In this one, through and through. So Tyrion V, the quintessential Tyrion has begun, you know, and exciting enough. All right, well, next time we'll get on to Eddard. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.